Do you mind if
Sure.
Do you mind if I ask a question now? Or you want to wait till the presentation is finished? So I have one question for you. What happens if in pursuit, an altercation, and the wire get disconnected from the unit? How does this capture anything that has transpired?
So what I'm wearing now is pretty much the same setup you have there. It's just a different camera, or the same camera, but clipped onto my collar. So what I'm wearing here is a two-camera system. And because we have a two-camera system, one camera can act as a backup. And this works perfectly with our new technology, which we call critical reconnect.
So I'm sorry, you're saying so an officer has to have two cameras on, or two cameras on?
He can. It's up to him. You know, we designed our camera so that he can just use it as a standalone unit as well.
So if he uses, a standalone, and because I've been in fights, and so a lot of stuff get taken off in a fight. So if this get pulled away, and now this is attached to my body, right? So my question is, does this still picks up the actual in time, if you will, occurrence that's taking place?
Yes. So if this camera was to become ripped off, this camera here was to be ripped off and disconnected from the main unit will resume recording of the audio and video. And that way the story's not lost, it's told from beginning to end.
So it still records?
Yes.
Okay.
But most folks just wear this and just use this, correct?
That's their choice. You know, we made it configurable, so if a department or an officer doesn't want to wear this external camera, he could actually just use this as a standalone camera.
But obviously the more, because cost is a big issue, we're hearing from folks that it costs a lot, but obviously if you add on the other attachments, that drives up the cost of the product. So it's my understanding that most agencies typically will just have a standalone unit by itself, correct?
That's true. You know, law enforcement agencies, they have a pretty tight budget, so they want to stretch their dollars, which is also why we try to give them the lowest price point so they can afford both cameras.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may just follow up? So it's up to the officer where he wants or she wants this position. So if it's on my waist where my sand brown is, it's kind of, it's way down here. So my question is, how effective is this device when it's on my belt from picking up?
I think if you put it on your belt, depending on the angle, you may not get the angle that you want. You know, we do design the body camera so that an officer can choose where he wants it to be mounted comfortably. But there's also, you know, department policy. Some departments might have a rule where he can't have it on his belt. He needs to have it on his chest or on his epaulet.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, I just had a question. So if I have it here clipped on my uniform, it's the only question I had. So if I go out to put out my arms with my service weapon, would that block the view? So what would you be recording? If I only have this on, right? Mm-hmm. The other one gets ripped off or whatnot, or I'm the officer and I just feel comfortable with it. Would that be an obstruction, or how would they position it? I've just had a question.
Well, the answer is yes. That can happen, and it has happened. We've seen video taken with other body cameras that clip onto the front of the chest, and when an officer punches out, there is some blockage. So officers can also clip this onto the epaulet, the shoulder epaulet for the above the shoulder view, and they still have that comfort and that light weight. Some officers will actually clip it a little bit higher onto their vest, so it's right above, right underneath the neck. Really? It doesn't interfere with the movement of their head, and that way when they punch out, it still records over the top of their hands.
Okay, only question.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Instant in-car video camera, I'm going to skip this, but basically you can go ahead and clip it onto the windshield visor of your car, and you have an instant car DVR. And what we notice is that a lot of departments across the nation, they are on a budget. Maybe they're a small town, and so they can't afford in-car. They have a budget, and they don't know if they want to spend on in-car or on body cameras. So this gives them the ability to use a body camera for both. Docking stations. Body cameras should have docking stations. Police officers need the ability to come into the station, dock the camera, and just go home. And so we try to make it as simple as possible. So docking stations are very important in the body cameras. So when you buy body cameras from another source other than a body camera manufacturer, you're not going to get docking stations. And A lot of people don't realize that docking stations are an integral part of a body camera system. Here's a video. If you look at the video here, basically in the morning, an officer would just come in, grab his unit, and go. And that's how we want it to be. We want it to make it as simple as possible. And at the end of the shift, he'll come back, dock it, and go home. Everything will be uploaded either to the cloud or to local storage. And that's where we're going to start talking about local storage versus cloud storage. Now, we at Wolfcom, we have local storage, and we will be launching our Wolfcom Cloud storage. So we do have experience in both types of storage. And I'd like to discuss a little bit about how one is versus the other. Before I do, though, I always like to do this in my presentation, which is to show people a 32 gigabyte micro SD card. So what you see there is a little memory chip that is about under $20 wholesale, and it's about the size of your fingernail. Now, that little chip right there can hold over 25 full-length movie features, movies in HD, 25 movies in HD. And if you buy it, you actually own it. But the problem is that when you go with cloud, you don't own this memory. You're actually renting it. With local storage, there's a one-time cost that a police department would pay, and that would be for the server. For, let's say, a 100-man department, that storage and server cost will be around $50,000. And once that server is purchased, and then all that video and data is actually stored and protected in the police department, in the police station, protected by cops. Law enforcement will have immediate access to the files without paying any type of fee. So if you need to access a file, let's say, you can access it immediately, and there's no extra cost. And you also own the server, and you own the management software. Now, although we are going to launch our cloud, I'd like to be truthful about the cloud. The great thing about the cloud is that it's part of our future. As technology moves forward, we're all going to be switching to cloud eventually. But cloud for law enforcement storage of evidence, there's got to be some consideration of the pros and cons. And what's great about the cloud storage is that you don't need to maintain the cloud if you're hiring someone else to do it for you. And that's the luxury of the cloud. However, you are renting the storage. You never own it. And the access to the files is really not immediate. If you need access to files, you're actually going to have to download it first and wait for that download time depending on the length of that file or the size. And then you're also going to have to wait until it downloads before you can view it. And there's also a cost to download the files each time. Now, if we're thinking about the Freedom of Information Act, where the media or anyone can just request, video, having cloud is going to be costly because you're going to have to download that video and you're going to have to pay for that download time. So with cloud, the data is not actually in the cloud. It's actually stored in another building somewhere else. And so you're paying for that transfer. You're paying for the highway, for the internet to transfer that data all the way to the other building. And so when it's stored in another building, let's say in Microsoft Azure or Amazon, it's actually not protected by law enforcement. There's no police department protection. And so there is a risk that there's a vulnerability to hacking. And we've seen, what happened to Sony, for example, what recently happened to the U.S. government where they were hacked. And so, for me, my concern about cloud is that if one video is released, let's say there's a disgruntled technician at some cloud storage company, and he accesses the video and uploads it to YouTube, then what will result is the largest law enforcement disaster in history. Imagine an inmate who's been convicted of a crime that was recorded on video, and he was convicted because of that video, and that video is stored on the cloud. And suddenly that same video is now on YouTube. Well, that inmate is going to move that his case be thrown out and he be freed, because the video that was used to convict him was never secured in the first place and may have been edited to make him look guilty. And if he moves for that freedom to get out of prison, think of the thousands of other inmates who are going to want that as well. And that will be a big mess, and that's my actually main concern. Another thing with cloud is it does use a lot of bandwidth. And so if, for many departments that, don't have, let's say, a T1 line, or maybe they do, if you have 100 or more officers coming in a day and docking their cameras and uploading, it will seriously bog down your bandwidth. Another thing that is a problem is migrating from cloud to local. Let's say that you have a department that has chosen the cloud and has used the cloud for maybe a year or two, and after 2 years they realize that it's just too costly for us. We're paying that monthly fee, it's expensive. Well, let's go back and revert to local storage. Well, the problem with migrating from cloud to local is that the time it's going to take to transfer all that video data, and plus you're going to lose all the metadata from that video. So that's going to end up to be pretty expensive. I'd now like to introduce Tiffany Wang. She's our CEO, and she will cover local storage, evidence management software.
So at Wolfcom, we don't just want to provide body cameras. We want to provide a...
Could you put the microphone a little closer to you?
Is that better?
A little closer. Yeah, bring it.
There?
You can pull it back towards you.
Okay. So at Wolfcom, we don't just want to provide body cameras. We want to provide a complete solution that's reliable, easy to use, and easy to understand. And that's going to be true for our body cameras and for our back-end management software. So with our evidence management software, all the files captured, whether it be video, pictures, or audio, can be managed by one evidence management solution. The security of the evidence is the most important. So the software will have individual logins for each user, whether it be the officer, the chief, the secretary. Everyone can have access to the software, but everyone will have their own rights and privileges. So maybe an officer can only see their own files or only the files from their division, or you could have it so the chief could see everybody's files. Certain files can be blocked. So this is all important. And there are times where editing of a video needs to be done, such as redaction. As Mr. Quirk said, there's times where a face needs to be blurred. So in our software, you can have a face blurred, the images that don't need to be seen, or maybe a child's name and report needs to be blacked out. That could all be done in our software. And in that software, the edited version will become a new file, and the original file will always be kept in the software, so that way you know it's authentic. Sometimes you need proof of this. You'll need proof of who saw the files. You want the chain of evidence to be protected. So there's an audit trail report for every single file. The audit trail report will be everything from when the file comes into the software. So who downloaded it, who took the file, who viewed it, who edited it, who burned to disk. Everything will be in that audit trail report. Also in the software, encryption is done. So all the files are encrypted, so that way you know the files are authentic and they can be admissible in court. So like Peter was saying earlier, this is our GPS Direct. So when you're watching the video on our software, you can see the map right next to it, and as the video moves, so does a dot on the map. So this is important if you're in a car chase or in a foot pursuit, you can see exactly where the video is going. So as you can see, Wolfcom wants to be there with the department from beginning to end, from when an officer leaves the station, when they're capturing video on the field, and when they come back to the station to protect their evidence.
We've got just a few more minutes before you guys need to wrap up. I'd love to have my fellow members be able to ask some questions.
Okay. So that was actually it.
Was it? that was great timing. Any questions from the committee?
So the comments I got from City of Oakland, which uses Adobe software to get rid of people's faces, protect privacy, was that it was taking them about an hour to look at every minute of that they would have to release. What happens with your software?
With our software, it's called redaction to blur the faces. it's all automatic. So you could do, say you have a video that's 300 frames. You could just block out that face, and for that 300 frames, it'll just automatically blur it out, or you could black it out totally. It'll be up to whoever is doing the editing. It only takes a few minutes at most.
All right, so to release an hour of videotape where they were looking at crowds in particular, how long do you think it would take to edit that?
So with the crowds, you can, as long as the frames, you could pick the place that you don't want to blur, and you could blur everything outside of that. So you could just pick that little frame and just go out through the whole thing. So it won't take that long. It's already included in the software to do that.
Great. That sounds very helpful.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I guess one of my biggest concerns, and this is not just your camera, but any body camera, is assailants are going to target these cameras because they know it has evidentiary value and they're not proponents of evidence. So my question is, how durable are these cameras? Because I think they're definitely going to be tried to be ripped free from officers and thrown. Have there been agencies where you have deployed these cameras that have had any kind of field experience and field testing?
Sure. So we've been selling these body cameras to law enforcement for the last 4 years, and we get that question a lot: is how durable are our cameras? Well, they have to be durable. You see, these are not normal cameras like a GoPro or your digital cameras where they're only used, at parties or an event. These body cameras are used almost every day. And some departments actually share one body camera between 2 officers. So that means that our body cameras are sometimes used 24 hours a day, just like a police vehicle. It's always out in the field. So we need to make them last for at least 2 years. And so we design our body cameras with quality in mind. They do pass a 6-foot drop test, although our body cameras, such as our Wolfcom Third Eye one, which is made out of hard ABS plastic, can withstand drops of 10 feet. So they are pretty durable.
And my last concern is the battery life. You mentioned 2.5 hours. It's not clear to me what that means.
Sure. So let me just show you this real quickly here. Oops. Okay. So basically, this is the Wolfcom Vision, our body camera in its entirety. So in this setup here, and I'll show you this, you have the camera here, and then you have our Wolfcom Vision with the secondary camera. In there is a 2.5-hour battery. And then you have a cable down to a battery pack that is usually worn on the belt, and this has a 15-hour battery here. Combined with the 2.5 hours, that will give you 15.5 hours of continuous nonstop recording. And this is ideal for departments that require pretty much all-day recording. But because there's many departments or officers that don't need 17.5 hours, from feedback that we've received over the years, almost 90% of officers that we've spoken to have told us that, we don't need all that time. The average is actually just 2 hours per officer per day. And so when we designed this body camera, we actually designed it based on feedback that we received from all these officers. And so we made it so that you can actually disconnect that battery pack, and you're left with 2.5 hours of battery life. And the same thing, if that's not enough, officers can go back to that setup right there. You probably haven't noticed this, but this is one of our other body cameras. So, in order to save space on a police officer uniform, because they almost have no more real estate on their belt, we incorporated a body camera into the speaker mic, the lapel mic of a 2-way radio. So this is actually a 4-in-1 device. It's a speaker mic, it's a digital camera, a video camera, and also it's a voice recorder. And what's great about it is that it's got an LCD screen on the back. And officers can use this actually as a tool. If I can stand, an officer can quickly detach this from his uniform, hold it up like a microphone to interview and get statements from victims who are camera shy. He could also detach it from his body and also use it to snap photos of crime scenes, bodily injury, or property damage. And yes, it's also a body camera as well. So it's a 4-in-1 unit. And this has a battery life of 6 hours of continuous nonstop recording. We actually call it a 6 to 12 hour battery. And that's because it's 6 hours of continuous nonstop recording, but it can last well over 12 hours of intermittent use. That means every traffic stop, every interaction of turning on, turning off.
But the majority of folks are going to use the smaller ones because it's
actually
much easier.
Actually, this is our first camera.
Right.
And we sold a lot of these, but those that we didn't sell, those that failed the T&E, when we received feedback from it, what we got was, hey, we love the camera, but we don't need the LCD screen. We don't like the weight because of the speaker mic. We don't use a speaker mic. We just use a regular radio, or we don't want a speaker mic. The battery makes the unit bigger, and we don't need a 6-hour battery. So remove the screen, remove the speaker mic, remove the 6-hour battery, make it smaller, and you have a winner. And that's why we created the WolfCom Vision, because it's not just our vision, it's their vision as well.
Thank you. Any more questions? Mr. Jones Sawyer, who's just joined us.
I'm sorry I'm late. I had an emergency meeting. And then you may have gone over this, and I, looking at your camera, wearing your camera. And so it's kind of a follow-up to Mr. Lackey's question, because it sounds like you're selling this camera, but you're not necessarily, you're selling it and waiting for feedback as opposed to testing it with law enforcement. And then, again, you may have already explained that, because I'm kind of concerned, for example, if the chairman mouthed off and I try to arrest him right now, Chairman Cooper, this isn't going to stay on me very long. We're going to be in an ugly, ugly fight. And at the end of the day, I don't know where this camera is going to end up at. I don't know where this stuff is going to end up at. And so back to Mr. Lackey's question, when you have to have an altercation with someone, and you want to, how far will you be able to record it? Will this last? Somebody throws it against the wall? I know you say it's sturdy, but if you're obviously we have two gentlemen here who are very familiar with having to arrest someone. How practical is this here up here, and how practical is this cord here? I can see it strangling me, but have you tested it with actual law enforcement who gone through some kind of training or some exercise to see whether or not how practical whatever the application is?
Yes. So we've sold over 10,000 body cameras in our history, and we're in over 300 law enforcement agencies. And we've received not only feedback, but also video from officers who were in a struggle for their life, where the unit either stays on their body or comes off. In a fight or a struggle with someone, everything pretty much comes off, even your clothes. And so we've gotten video back where the unit was tossed or dropped on the ground or came off during a fight, but it takes a licking, keeps on ticking, and it's still recording. And we've got that video footage.
So the answer is no. You do not test it in an act. You do not test it ahead of time. Well, your answer is you sell it, send it out, hope that it works, and then it comes back. You get where I'm?
Okay, I got it.
So before you sell something to someone, I would hope that you test it before you send it out in the field, because they're in some very dangerous positions, and this is fairly important.
Yeah, so we have actually a video on our Facebook page where we're showing how our cameras are actually baked in the oven, chilled in a freezer, to minus 5 degrees or 20 degrees. Also on a vibrating machine that goes through all the oscillation, the vibrations from low frequency to high frequencies of vibration, with the video camera still recording, and we played back that video to show that it hasn't been interrupted. We also do a drop test where it's dropped from 6 feet and as high as 10 feet as well. So we do the thorough testing before we sell it. And we have to, because we're in business, and the last thing we want to do is spend $250,000 to develop a body camera only for it to fail. Because law enforcement, when they have a body camera and if it fails them, they actually talk to each other. And the last thing we want to do is to destroy our brand.
Any further questions?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olnrang and Ms. Wang. Now I'd like to we already had our public comments, so I'm going to change gears. Now we got some folks that need to get a flight. So policy development of the deployment, use, and viewing of body cameras and the video produces has been a primary discussion in the Capitol for several months. As stated in my opening, I believe that policy development is best kept at the local level. Many law enforcement agencies have been using body cameras for years, and many join the ranks every day. Every one of these agencies, unless they are under a consent decree, have managed to develop and deploy sensible policies that balances transparency and professional responsibility. Examples of these agencies range from large agencies such as the San Diego Police Department to smaller agencies such as the Rialto Police Department. I invited the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles Police Protective League to provide their example of how management and labor from the largest law enforcement agency in the state have effectively come together on their own to develop their body-worn camera policy. I would like to invite our panel of experts up on the issue of policy development. Please join me in welcoming Police Administrator Arif Alakan, Special Assistant for the Constitutional Policing, Los Angeles Police Department, and President Craig Lally, Los Angeles Police Department, Police Protective League, and Lieutenant with the Los Angeles PD. Thank you for coming today, gentlemen. Hopefully I didn't butcher your names too bad.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Assemblyman Cooper and the panel. My name is Arif Ali Khan. I'm the Director of the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy for the Los Angeles Police Department, as you mentioned. I'm seated with Lieutenant Craig Lally, the President of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and Elizabeth Silver, who is the General Counsel for the Police Protective League. On behalf of Chief Charlie Beck and Mayor Garcetti, I want to thank you for inviting us to this important hearing. As you had mentioned, the LAPD, in collaboration with community members and especially with the LA Police Protective League, which is representing the 7,000 Los Angeles police officers who will be carrying and using body-worn video, worked very collaboratively to come up with a very balanced, what we believe is a very balanced, fair, and flexible policy for the use of on-body video. Video is not something that's new to the LAPD. As you may know, for the last 5 years, we have deployed digital in-car video systems in South Los Angeles in over 300 patrol vehicles, and we've been using that for 5 years and to great success, in which we have learned many things, some of the unintended consequences, some of the unintended benefits of having video deployed in enforcement and investigative activities with members of the public. Over that 5-year period, we have recorded 1.3 million interactions of average length of approximately 12 minutes, and that is only in the South Los Angeles area. We recently deployed in the Central Bureau area, so we've now doubled that in just the digital in-car video, and ultimately we will have it in all 4 bureaus. When it comes to body-worn video, the LAPD actually began testing body-worn video back in January of 2014, so more than 6 months prior to body-worn video being the national discussion point that it has been since the Ferguson incidents. And we have tested a variety of devices and looked for something that was fit the unique needs of the LAPD. And through that pilot project, we also learned what were the important factors in terms of a policy, and making sure that we had clear guidelines so officers knew what to do. When we received a generous donation from the LA Police Foundation to purchase of $1 million to purchase additional body-worn video, we began a very lengthy policy development progress that involved community meetings with small groups, advocacy groups, public hearings from the LA Police Commission, an extensive review of existing and proposed law enforcement policies, not only from throughout the United States, but from the UK and other countries, our own experience in dealing with digital in-car video, our testing of it, and then, of course, working very closely with our partners in the Police Protective League to develop a policy that had clear guidance for the officers who are ultimately tasked with using it, and making sure that policy guidance was clear to the community that they serve. The Department's usage policy it outlines objectives and procedures that I mentioned we believe are clear, balanced, flexible, and also take into consideration the span and the scope of the City of Los Angeles, with 475 square miles, over 25 police stations, and dealing with numerous types of interactions with members of the public. As we developed this policy, we basically looked at 3 questions. First, what is the objective of the program? There are many different beliefs on why body-worn video should be used, from transparency to criminal prosecution, but we really did focus it on looking at making sure that we're collecting valuable evidence that could be used for criminal prosecutions, civil cases in defense, administrative processes, and accountability to ensure that officers were remaining in policy and within the law. The second question was what should be recorded. And our policy very much focuses on enforcement and investigative activities with members of the public. It is not intended to be a surveillance system of officers or the public. It is really focused on and requires recording interactions between investigative enforcement activity with a member of the public. And that was very important so that we were remaining focused on the objective of the system. And then third, the question of who should have access. Access to the officers, access to the public, access by management for various purposes and auditing. And none of these are easy questions to answer. But fortunately, we worked through these issues. We identified the common interests that the management and the Police Protective League had in putting out a very valuable tool, not just for the public, but also for the officers. Unfortunately, there are many frivolous complaints that are filed or allegations that are made on uses of force that turn out to be untrue. So far, just in our experience with digital in-car video and our pilot program with body-worn video has shown that the video is very helpful in clarifying those circumstances and exonerating officers for alleged misconduct. We've also found that video gives us one important view into a much more complex incident. And having the audio and the video enables the department to have a better understanding of what happened. However, it's very important to remember that video is simply one piece of evidence. It is one piece of evidence, and whenever we're evaluating any incident, we're trying to look at the totality of the circumstances and all the evidence before making any judgments. Now, I know one of the issues that this hearing is being convened is to see whether legislation is necessary for various issues. And I, of course, defer to the Assembly and the Senate to make that determination. But what I can tell you is that what we were able to achieve in Los Angeles is an example of a large, complex department working very closely with the community and the representatives of the officers who will be using this new system to develop a clear, balanced, flexible policy that we hope will cover the numerous types of incidents and circumstances that officers encounter every day. And I just wanted, I know Lieutenant Lally just wanted to say a couple of words.
Briefly, good morning. I just want to say a few words. First of all, when we took this project on almost a year ago, I knew it would affect basically every big city police department in the country. This will be the model for every big city police department in the country. I've gotten calls from New York, Chicago, everybody that's going to get, every big city department that's going to get body cameras, they're going to be looking for us, looking at this policy. So I looked at the bigger picture. It's not only going to affect our police officers throughout the state, but definitely throughout the country and maybe even throughout the world, like Gareth just stated. So that's the big picture that we've got. That's why I think we got this right.
And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee?